Hey, what is going on, everyone? It's me, Mr. Mario, and welcome back to another episode of Mario's Minute. For those who do not know, this here is the second podcast I do. My main podcast, Matcha, is one where it's a little bit more refined, a little bit more edited, and there's going to be some more focus on there, in which I talk about things that I find interesting, cool, new, relevant, things that I want to do a little bit of show and tell on in the world of video game modding and video game console modding. However, this is not that. This here is Mario's Minute, where it's my secondary podcast where I come on here and I talk to you all about really wherever the hell I want to. Sometimes I have a guest on, sometimes I don't, and I try and do my best to alternate it month to month. However, this month I will say I'm dropping the ball a little bit. My apologies in advance here. So it's just going to be a solo episode. Last one was a solo one. This one's a solo one. It's on me to find someone. I get that. However, I did reach out to one friend to see if they wanted to come on, and they said, hey, I really appreciate it, would love to. Right now is not a good time. And I was like, you know what? That's all good. Appreciate it. I'll reach back out. And then after that, I didn't reach out to anybody else because, I've just been a little swamped, a little bit busy. And there's just been some things that I've been having to work on behind the scenes here. Nothing all too bad, thankfully. But just, life is a thing as well, too. So that's how that goes. But I'm not complaining. But either way, Mario's Minute is a podcast here in which I try to do in two different forms. First of all, I have a video visual form where I do a video upload here on the Mr. Mario 2011 YouTube, Rumble, and Odyssey channels. Or since it is a podcast, you can actually take it around and listen to it wherever the hell you want to, like an actual podcast. Simply look up Mario's Minute on your favorite podcasting app, host, provider, or platform, and you should hopefully be able to find it. I know it's not available on all of them, but it is available on most of them. I am going to be getting into the topics here, but I did think of something literally in the last 30 seconds that I was like, this would be a little bit funny thing to share right here. Because recently I was hanging out with one of my friends, and I guess this came about because I was thinking of, just doing my spiel here for the beginning intro with all of this. And she was telling me about her podcasting situation where I guess she uses YouTube Music, I want to say. And she was like one of the 3 people in the wild I saw who actually use YouTube Music. Like, you're not putting it onto them or anything. It's not like some person online. It's like, no, this is one person I organically met offline and she was already using YouTube Music. I feel like those people are kind of a rare breed. Actually paying for it, I mean, as well, too. But it was funny because it'd been several months since we'd hung out. So we're talking and she was telling me wait, hey, did you know that there's podcasts that are on YouTube Music now? And I should say too, by the way, I swear this is not an advertisement for it. Okay, honestly, it's not. This is a conversation that happened. But she was saying, hey, did you know that there's podcasts on there now? And I said, yeah, Google used to do this thing where they used to have Google Podcasts. It was separated, but now they're kind of just trying to combine everything. So, you have YouTube, you have YouTube TV, you have YouTube Music, and then they roll the podcasts into it. And I don't know what she was using before for her podcast. No, it was Apple because she's on iOS. So she said, yeah, I used to use Apple and then I was running into issues. It's more just I didn't like that they kept ruining my flow with my podcast by putting the advertisements on there. So I was looking and I said, hey, I could actually go ad free if I just subscribe to the same podcasts on YouTube Music because that's what I'm paying for. And then she just kind of screamed because she's like, yeah, so I was setting up my podcasts and your podcast popped up. And I just busted out laughing. And she's like, no, I don't watch your stuff. I wasn't looking for it. But literally, I go over to the podcast section. I'm just scrolling, trying to search for my podcast. And yours was one of the first ones that popped up. I was like, okay, wait a minute. I have 2 of them. So I don't want to be like that guy, but I got 2 of them. Which one was it? And she said, oh, it was the Mario's Minute one. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, that one is the more personal, slice of life type one. The other one, Mod Chat, I would actually be shocked if you recommended that. But she was laughing and she's like, no, it was really cool that my friend's podcast was on there because she's one of those people. She knew me for probably months before I ever hinted or told her about any of the Mr. Mario stuff. So it's kind of one of those times where it's I have friends who they already know about it, and then I have other friends such as her where it's they know me for me, and then they find out I do the YouTube thing. So she kind of just knows me as a bog standard person, which I am. That's it. I'm just a standard person. I'm nothing more than that. But it was funny having her see that and then tell me about that situation in real time. So that was a little funny thing there, I guess podcast related. However, one thing that we wanted to get into, or I guess I wanted to get into here, was something I've spent, the last few weeks, really like most of March covering here on the channel, and that has been Bad Update. Now, for anybody who does not know, Bad Update is not as bad as it sounds. It is actually pretty good. It is pretty cool if you are looking to run homebrew on an Xbox 360. If you have no idea what I'm talking about here, I guess the best TLDR or TLDW I can give about this is that a known developer and reverse engineer by the name of Grimdoomer had essentially his swan song, and I guess his final boss of reversing the Xbox 360 was breaking into the hypervisor. And many people might be thinking, well, what the hell, the Xbox 360, it's old, like it's been modded to hell and back, like that's not really that impressive. It is, because we haven't had an actual hypervisor exploit since 2006, which was with the King Kong exploit, and that is actually when that was disclosed and released and everything. That is the reason why Microsoft ended up activating the eFuses that were in the CPU itself, meaning that whenever there was an update that was run, it would burn an eFuse, so you couldn't just be, you couldn't outsmart the system and try and downgrade your kernel to a exploitable version to run this exploit here. So that was the main reason for that. However, we've had flash DVD drives, which you install a custom firmware to the DVD drive, and then you can play burned games as long as they're patched properly. But that didn't allow for unsigned code execution, because you even had to format the game a certain way, and then even if you ran an executable from the game itself, it had to be a signed executable, which the only entity that could really sign a retail executable and encrypt it and everything for that to get working on a retail system with absolutely no modifications, the only entity that can do that is Microsoft. So there has been ways that it's been done on the original Xbox. That's why we have things such as Endgame on there, and the previous softmod exploits, they were able to be signed using a Habibi key. I believe that's what it is, and I don't have like a full understanding of that in all honesty, but Microsoft ended up patching that pretty well with the Xbox 360. And of course we have JTAG, we have RGH, we have all those other things, but those are essentially, well, I'll focus on RGH here. You are quite literally glitching the system, and you are resetting it at a very specific point, where when the system is trying to do its hash calculation to make sure that that everything is secure, that there's nothing funny going on the system, if you glitch the system and you cause it to reset at a very specific point, you could cause it to still run. Like, how do I put it? The system will still be running. The CPU is not going to fully crash at that point, and I guess, well, specifically some more of the SMC, but it's not going to crash at that point, but it's not going to be able to do the hash calculation there, which that is what allows you to run a modified NAND. And when you have a modified NAND, that's when you can just boot up Homebrew straight away. You go to your system, I can even do it here. There, I turned on my Xbox right here, and it's already in a modified state, and there we go. I'll go ahead and turn it off. So that's what RGH allows us to do, but that's not breaking the hypervisor. That's kind of just still going around it and making it irrelevant to our situation. So Bad Update was developed by Grimdoomer, so now that we have kind of history there, it was developed and released by Grimdoomer, where he just wanted to find a way to be able to, on the latest dashboard, really just using like a USB drive if possible, without having to open up the system, without having to flash a custom firmware, without doing any of that extra stuff, without soldering anything. He just wanted a way to be able to break the hypervisor and be able to run unsigned code on the system. And he accomplished it beautifully. Now, the reason why it was called Bad Update is because essentially he found a way to call and then abuse the update function on the system itself. So when that's happening, there is a very specific race condition that's happening. It could take some time. It will crash the system as well too. So it does have a low reliability rate, but if it is done successfully, then the race condition can be met. And then that means that with quite literally completely stock out of the box system, you can even, like, if I went, like if they were still selling them new, I could go down to a store, buy a brand new Xbox 360, take it out of the box, hook it up here, run the latest software update on it, and without ever opening up the system, it can still be exploitable. Like, that was the goal right there. We've had 2 entry points. One of them was using Tony Hawk's American Wasteland. The other one was using Rock Band Blitz. And the Rock Band Blitz seems to be the better one. Just clarifying this here, not because it's a more stable game, but more because with Tony Hawk's American Wasteland, you would have to run a save game exploit. But the problem is when you're loading that in, the entire game looks frozen. And it was quite literally run the exploit and wait 20 minutes. And if it hasn't exploited, turn off the system, turn it on, run it again, and wait 20 minutes. And if it hasn't exploited, turn off the system, turn it on again, wait 20 minutes. That was what you had to do on there. Rock Band Blitz is nicer because it can run from a demo. It's all on a USB drive, so you can just put on a drive there. You don't even have to have a working DVD drive at that point. So you don't have to pay for a game. You just need a USB drive on hand, which everyone should have one of those on hand. Then when you get everything loaded in, there's also music and there's a video. I guess there's kind of an animation playing in the background. And if the music and the animation end up stopping, that means that the exploit has crashed, which is really important because not only it does save time, but it doesn't allow, unless this could happen. This happened a few times. If you wait the full 20 minutes and it's still running, you can still restart the system. But there's many times the exploit ends up crashing long before that 20 minutes. It might crash a minute, 2 minutes, 4 minutes, 8 minutes in. So it saves you some time there. So that's been cool, at least. And there's been a lot of development on it. I know not we, but I guess when I say we, the community, people have been managing to get games up and running on there, from backing them up to like a USB drive, running them from there, getting different patches on there in the form of like Free My Xenon or Free My Z. Shout out to Invoxy Play Games. I made sure to say her name right on that one there. I kept saying Invoxy Plays Games because that's what made sense to me, but no, it's Invoxy Play Games. So Free My Xenon has been excellent for it because it works really well in conjunction. It's been getting updates. So essentially you load in the exploit and then you load in Free My Xenon, which is kind of like the payload for the patches that most people are going to want. And a lot of people are kind of comparing it to like a hen-like experience. Just to clarify, it is not a soft mod. It is not persistent. And thankfully, it hasn't been as bad as the PS4 scene. And by that, I mean, I'm not meaning like that scene is like horrible or anything. It's just that whenever there's a new jailbreak there's a lot of people who they say, oh, okay, if you want to stabilize it, you have to do this, and you have to do this, and then you have to open this up, and then you have to do this, and you have to do this. I remember this from like these 7.x days on there. In my experience, a lot of that was BS, and I think a lot of it was coincidental. So there's been some of that, not as much, but there's been some of it with Bad Update where people have been saying, hey guys, if you end up doing this here, you can increase the chances of it working, or if you do this, it increase. And no, for the most part, no. It's not how it works. It's lucky race conditions. There's some people where they say, oh, this model is better than this other model, and this one will be, or some people say, yeah, this doesn't work on these models here. No, it's either you're lucky or you're not. That's how it is. I've had it on my systems where sometimes it could take me, I don't know, an hour and a half to get it to run successfully. There's other times it takes 6 minutes and maybe like a couple tries to get it to run successfully. But for the most part, I've been telling people, because there's been people who've been saying, oh man, I bet this is going to turn into a completely persistent soft mod. No, I would love to be proven wrong on this, but I did a pretty good breakdown, I feel like, of it with Mod Chat 131, where I went through the technical aspect of it. And if you go through that technical aspect, like the technical write-ups that Grim did, and you try your best to understand them, you'll come to the conclusion that, first of all, it's incredible he got to this point. Secondly, it's running on really razor-thin margins. So, no, I would be surprised if there was something to improve it, but in terms of getting like a persistent soft mod, like for example, the original Xbox, where you can soft mod it and it will get to the point where you literally just turn on the system and then you're able to get into a modded state, that's not going to be happening on here. I think the closest we can get is like we can, as applications are updated, as there's more patches, as there's more development and experience that's happening around the Bad Update environment itself, we could probably get to some pretty close parity to like a RGH system, but it's not going to be the full thing. It would be something similar to, again, like PS3 hen on there. But for people saying this stabilizes it, that stabilizes it, no. No. No, I don't have much else to say on that. But then there's been people who've been saying, okay, well, I don't want to run this every single time and it's taking forever and I have to cold boot it every time, or, it was perfect the first 8 times I ran it and now I've tried to run it 30 times in a row and it's not working on there. What can I do? What can I improve with it? I just tell people RGH. That's the answer for them. Even Grimdoomer himself, he has said as well too, RGH is, in his words, it is and it will remain the de facto mod for being able to turn on a system, an Xbox 360 in this case, and boot into a modified state. That's how it's going to work there. So now getting to this, because I feel like I've kind of summed it up decently well there, I will say it's been, as someone who, you can see I'm kind of fumbling for my words here, because I'm just kind of still in disbelief, even like almost a month out from this here. I'll get a little mushy here, I guess, but I'll say the Xbox 360 is my favorite console of all time. I think if you take 2 looks at the channel, you could probably gather that. I know some people have kind of like questioned it when I was like covering like just a multitude of different systems, or if I'd covered like the PS3 for a while or something. But no, there's a lot of systems I like. There's also systems I dislike, I'm not as interested in. But the Xbox 360, it's always been kind of that sweet spot for me. And I think it was just because of the era that I grew up with it, where it came out at like a really pivotal time in my life. And it came out when I was in middle school. And then I ended up, I think it was like right before high school started, I ended up getting my own, ended up saving a good amount of money for it, really got into just the online infrastructure of that, the achievements, the games, even then, of course, later on, the modding aspect of it as well, too. In fact, I actually, for a few years, I was not into playing games, funny enough. Then I end up getting back into it with the Xbox 360 because one of my best friends ended up selling me a flashed console. And that kind of tickled the technical aspect of it, because I've always been, if I could choose just being like a general tech nerd or a video game nerd, it's going to be a general tech nerd. I was a tech nerd first before I touched video games. That's always how it's been for me. So when I was learning to like back up my games, patch them, burn them, then later on flashing drives and doing more stuff on there, that really tickled that, like that kind of scratched that technical itch that I had been missing. But because if you have a flash DVD drive on Xbox 360, there's not too much, respectfully, that you can do. Learning the process is really fun. Doing it is kind of a therapeutic thing. I enjoy it personally. Like I can't really describe why exactly I enjoy it, but it's just a very fun process for me overall. But the end result is that you can play games off of DVDs. That's about it. So what I did was I started playing more games because I wanted to still toy around with this technical aspect of it, and I wanted to see how far I could push it with a DVD drive, and that actually got me back into gaming when I didn't have a love for gaming. I actually had kind of a disdain for it for a couple years. And I remember I really didn't like that generation near the end, because it was that generation that went on for a while, and I know several people like Adam Core, like he's covered it in his videos, he has said, guys, Generation 7 lasted a long time. That was not normal. That happened because of economic circumstances. Like, because of how everything was happening in the world at this point, it wouldn't have been a smart decision to just start Generation 8 in the middle of Generation 7, which is typically when Generation 8 would have happened. But at that point, PC gaming was also getting to be bigger, but also more affordable and more accessible. So then you essentially, like around 2011, 2012, you had people that were building PCs and they were playing the same games on PC they were on Xbox 360. And they're like, well, what the hell? I paid, $35 for this on Steam. after a discount and such, and I'm able to play this game at 1080p native, 60 frames per second locked. It just came out on Xbox 360. It's $60 on there. It's like 572p native, and it barely runs at 30 frames per second. Obviously, PC is going to be the better one. The Xbox 360, the PS3 is crap. That's what people were thinking at that point. But now, so many years later, so many years removed, and even before Bad Update, funny enough, before this, it's really just kind of been a theme for me through the year. I've been gravitating on my 360 more. I've been playing more games on my Xbox 360 and my Switch than any of my other systems. My PS5, I don't really use all that much. My Xbox Series X, the thing that actually made me open it in the first place was that I could play Xbox and Xbox 360 games on it in 4K. That was really cool. I opened it up and I played through the Max Payne series the first week I ended up playing through there. But I don't even think I've hooked it up this year, in all honesty. I don't think I have, which is a shame because I need to replay Max Payne 3 again. My girlfriend and I are like maybe a third of the way through that, something like that. So, yeah. But going through that all, as I've been more and more removed from that generation, I've had a bit more love for it, and especially the Xbox 360. Not only, it was that nice sweet spot era where we were first getting into the HD era of games, even if they weren't natively HD, right? It was still at least upscaled to HD, so when you play them now, you can hook up the system to HDMI, it still looks pretty good for the most part. And then the games too, you still had that weirdness, then that sense of adventure and that sense of taking a risk that companies were still willing to embrace at that point. You gotta realize we've had Grand Theft Auto 5 on how many systems at this point? But on the Xbox 360, I'm not even counting the backwards compatible ones, we had Grand Theft Auto 4, 2 expansion packs for it, which are kind of like full campaigns on their own, and Grand Theft Auto 5, and several other great Rockstar games on there as well too. And then Rockstar also took chances. They put table tennis on the table tennis. Can we just pause for a moment and just say, like, Rockstar games, the ones that are doing the big stuff, like we're still waiting for Grand Theft Auto 6, they had Red Dead Redemption 2, I think that was the last game that came out. They released a table tennis game on the Xbox 360. And it's good, from what I know. I have it. I have not played it, but I've heard very good things about it from the people who've enjoyed it. So it was kind of that sweet spot there. It's also really nice that I can literally grab a game off my shelf, put it into the disk drive, and the entire game is on there. Even if I'm not on the latest patch, it's still quite playable. Even the games themselves, the sizes aren't too bad. It's, if it's a multi-disc game, you might be dealing with at most 30 gigabytes if it's a 4-disc game at that point, but you might even be working with, a few hundred megabytes at minimum for a game. Title updates, you're not having to download these huge ones with some exceptions aside from like the Burnout Paradise. That was it, Burnout Paradise. You had to download like these like 1 or 2 gigabyte downloadable content pieces that were counted as updates on there. And later on in the generation, they had things such as HD packs. They had not language packs. I'm not going to count that. This has just turned into a love note for the Xbox 360, right? My apologies, but not really at the same time. But you had install discs, you had content installs, you had all that additional stuff, and that was later on, and that was kind of more excusable because it's like, hey, look, yeah, you're going to have to, for example, Grand Theft Auto 5 came out in 2013. You're going to have to do a content install of like 6-7 gigabytes. One disc is going to be your content installer on there. But you're also playing Grand Theft Auto 5 on a system from 2005. And that was the other thing too. Like, I've been going back and I've been playing games on there, and I just sit there like, I used to rag on this, like, back in the day, like, during, 2011, 2012 era, where it's like, oh my god, like, these consoles are so pathetic, and they're disgusting, and games look and play horribly. And now, so many years later, I look at it, and I'm like, I mean, yeah, it's not going to be native HD, like, it would absolutely look leagues better on my PC. My PC can also play this game at like probably 144 frames locked as opposed to trying to maintain 30 frames a second. But you know what? This game playing on a console from 2005, it's really holding its own here. Pretty impressive stuff. So that's kind of how that's been there. I guess this is a long way of saying that I have a lot of love for the Xbox 360, and I also want to extend a thank you to you all for the ones who are listening and who've been watching that content as well too, because this is kind of the mushy part here. I'll give you a heads up. When I had first started covering Bad Update, and I guess I'll say with this month, it was with the Mod Chat episode that I did. And I'd covered it before when like we got some notices of it. But this time around, I ended up going through both of the write-ups that Grim Doomer did, and I also showcased the exploit itself. And then I've been recording videos about it, tutorials, things like that, putting out updates. And I'll say that it's kind of just, it's been almost effortless for me. Because it's been a system I've been familiar with, but also this has been a process I've been doing for so long, but I've just also had so much fun with it. And I think it's a thing that, it's not even a thing, I know that people do see it, they hear it, even if it's completely intangible. And honestly, when that Mod Chat episode went out, Mod Chat 131, I'm going to tell you all, I was going to bury my head in the sand. I was like, man, I am not a developer. I'm not a reverse engineer. I'm not a coder. I don't have a full understanding of this here. I'm trying to do my best, but I don't want to misconstrue anything. I don't want to cause any issues with this here. Oh man, people might, they might pick at this, or I said this incorrectly, or I didn't cover this properly, or I didn't explain this part properly. I feel like I'm out of my league here. Like that's how it was. Right? So I kind of just remember just burning through that episode. Like it was kind of just a blur making that one in a good way. In a good way, I'll say. But I did all of that. I enjoyed it. But I remember I had this feeling inside of me where I was like, this is not good. This is not good. This is not good. And then it released and it started really hitting. And it was getting a good amount of views, more than like my videos normally do, which I'll say, like my videos don't get the most views, and I'm fine with that, because I'm like, even if like this, I've said this before, this podcast, even if it gets like 1,000 views, I'm like, dude, that's so cool that there's 1,000 people that want to listen to this. That's awesome. I don't care how the ratio looks on the channel. That's incredible right there. So then when it started like really popping off, I'm like, okay, it's getting viewed and people seem to be really enjoying it. And on top of that, then I was going to other platforms where, you typically go to another platform and you're going to have people hating on it, So it's like, hey, breaking out of the echo chamber. But I go to other platforms, other sites, and I'm seeing people reference the video. But in a good way, like they're saying, hey, Mr. Mario ended up covering this on this episode of Mod Chat. Even though it's an hour long, I recommend watching it. He did a good job covering it. And I'm like, I was in disbelief, I'll be honest. And look, I know it's one of those things. I'm not going to be liked by everyone, and that's okay. When you sign on to the internet, you're already going to have haters. I acknowledge that, and I'm not trying to please everyone, because if I did that, I would be miserable and I would be exhausted. And I'm already, I have my moments where I might be a little bit miserable, and I'm tired a lot of the time as well, too. Not all the time. Okay. Some of the time, a lot of the time. I'm still working on this ear infection stuff, so my energy level is up and down, is what I'm saying. But I guess that's all to say. Again, a thank you on there, because I think for me, I just had a few moments, like the first day or two that episode released, and it meant so much to me, because it kind of felt like it was a culmination, in a small way, a culmination of everything I had worked towards. I've been doing the YouTube thing for years at this point. I've been covering the Xbox 360, but it was no longer just, an 18, 19-year-old kid in their bedroom just be like, hey guys, I'm gonna show you how to mod the Xbox 360 here. And it evolved long beyond that. It was something that I was able to still deliver. I was still able to have fun with. I saw people enjoyed it, but I was just happy to get the information out there, and in a way that it was understandable for folks. And there was even people who said, hey, look, I know more about this topic than you, But for somebody who's not like you're not a reverse engineer, not a developer, like you did a pretty good job breaking this down for like the layperson here. So if I have non-technical friends who are interested in this and they want to know more, I'm going to link them this video. Like, good job on here. And a lot of that meant a lot. And like even when I go through my comments, I even go through the held for review and all that, and I sort through there, and I remember looking and I'm like, I can't find a bad comment. I think the only ones I found, honestly, like if I'm really stretching it, there were like one or two people who said you're late, and I'm like, well, no, I'm not, so you're blocked. So I know some people, they'll feel certain ways about it. I'm just like, if you're gonna come here and you're gonna try and sour the experience, I don't have the time. As I get older, time is the only thing that we don't get more of on here. I'm not gonna waste my time with these people, so we're just gonna get them out of the channel. You can be miserable on another channel, on another platform. You're not gonna be doing it here. But no, I'm not late on this here. So that was really like the only thing. And then, of course, the videos I've been doing covering it afterwards, even talking with other developers as well, too. It's been a joy overall, and I will say it sounds a little silly, but I've been honored to be able to cover this and to be able to convey this and help out people with it, get the word out there as well, too. And it's been a really awesome experience overall. So I think that the last thing I'll say on this is... at one point, like, I think it was that night when it went out, I remember I was telling my girlfriend, I'm like, and she was really happy, because I'm just like, hey, so, the Mod Chat episode went out, and, like, it's getting viewed, but it's, like, a lot more than I expected, like, a lot more, like, I keep, if I just sit here and I keep refreshing my phone, like, the numbers just keep going up, and she's like, oh, that's good, that's really good, and she fully supports me on this. Like, she I absolutely love her, of course, but she, like, when we met, she didn't know I did the Mr. Mario thing or anything, but even when I told her, she was kind of like, that's cool, like, I figured you did something, I'm not dumb, but I didn't ask, because I figured there was a reason why you didn't tell me. But at one point later on, I did tell her, of course, but so she supports it. She sees genuinely, like, behind the scenes, like, when I work on this, like, if I'm not working on YouTube videos, if I'm away from the channel, if I'm really wanting to work on a video, my schedule is preventing me from doing it for, like, days and days and days on end, I get a little bit grumpy. And then when I, like, really, like, work, I get in here, like, I do something, she sees that I enjoy that, and even if I'm tired, I'm happy afterwards, if I'm finishing up a video late at night or something. So she sees the positive aspect. But essentially, I told her, I'm like, yeah, it keeps going up. And she said, oh, that's good. And I'm like, yeah, but I'll be honest, I was so nervous about this. Like, I didn't think it was going to be good. I thought it was going to be messed up. I wasn't sure. Like, I thought this is going to be bad. And she just asked me, well, did you put your heart into it? And I said, yeah, I did. And she replied with, that's why it's doing so well, because people can see that you put your heart into it. And that's where it's been. And that's why, I mean, kind of wrapping this up here, I feel like this is kind of exactly where I'm able to put my heart at, where it's kind of a combination of the tutorials, the delivery, the bringing this out to people in a digestible form, having people be able to follow it from beginning to end. If it's like a tutorial fashion or something, they're able to cover it there, and just still being able to entertain with the video or the tutorial or the podcast, whatever it might be as well too. That's what I kind of said. It's kind of just in a small way, a culmination of kind of everything that I've done, either personally or professionally, kind of put into one, like, leading up to something like this. And it's like, hey, end results seem to be pretty cool. That's awesome. Good job. Keep going. This isn't the end, but keep going. That's how I feel about it. So, again, thank you. When you really have a lot of love for something and you put your heart into it, even when it's tiring, it's still effortless. That's what I'm trying to say. It can be both at the same time. So now, the mushy stuff aside, I'm going to tell you something a little bit infuriating. Several years ago, one of my best friends in the world, he's been on the channel here, so his name is Sean. Absolutely love that dude. But a few years ago, he wanted to build a custom PC. And the goal was we were going to be buying, well, he was, okay? He was going to buy a part at a time, or I think at the time, this is like around, it was around when COVID was happening, I want to say, because that's when the GPU market went crazy. But for years, he wanted me to build a custom PC for him. And I said, yeah, absolutely. And he wanted to see one built as well, too. So we had this plan. I said, look, we can spec one out for you, buy the parts, bring it over, we'll build it, you can help me out, all that stuff. And it was going to be a fun process. But it got to the point, I essentially said, I'm like, hey, look, because this is when the 2000 series of RTX GPUs was out. But I remember I said, hey, look, let's get the GPU, and then when we get the GPU, we can build around it. And he said, okay, awesome. Then the 2000 series cards we couldn't get a hold of. And I'm like, well, I'm not letting my friend buy a scalped one, right? So I just said, look, we'll just wait. Then the 3000 series cards was announced. And I said, hey, man, you're going to want to wait on this, actually. Let me actually see like when the release date was for like the RTX 3060, for example. When did this come out? Release date. Y'all know how it is. The last few years, they've all... Oh, yeah, okay. So it was released officially February 25th, 2021. Yeah, so it was this time. So it was the 3000 series. So I remember it was announced, and I'm like, hey, dude, look. Save your money. We're not going to get a 2000 series. We're going to get you a 3000 series. We can get you one cheaper and even more performant. And he's like, ooh, I like that. Okay, all right, cool. I got you. And I said, cool, I got you. And then I didn't get him in the end because then we couldn't find the cards anywhere. Because you all might remember, COVID was going on. All the mining was happening there. And it was nearly impossible to get a GPU at MSRP. And I'm one of those people, I don't want to support scalpers. And I don't want my friends to support scalpers. So we just had to put this dream of building his computer on pause for years. And then finally he ended up caving. He did not pay a scalper, but what he did was he did essentially the thing that most people in his position did. He went with a pre-built PC because at that point it was going to be not as fun, not as good as building your own PC, but it was pretty much the only way he could get a new computer at a reasonably not scalped price and get a modern GPU in there. And I was like, I don't agree with it, but I understand it. You do you. It's your money. I get it. I'm not hurt by it. But the thing that did hurt a little bit was that at one point you got to realize sometime before, there was one time he came to my house and he gave me this bag and he's like, hey, man, so I think it's better if you hold on to it. But the PC I've been wanting to build for years, I finally bought a part for it. I bought the motherboard that you told me to buy. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. So I held on to his motherboard for years. Like I had it kicking around here, brand new inbox with the receipt and everything. And then he ended up going out and buying a whole computer. This computer was at a local store and it was custom built. Like what they do is it was a pre-built, but it wasn't. It was like a pre-built with like custom off-the-shelf parts and such. And you put them in there and, they charge a markup. Y'all know how it goes, right? And then his motherboard, I ended up repurposing it. I did end up paying for it, so I ended up giving him the money, like the face value, right? I just bought it from him at the same cost he paid for it, so he wasn't out any money. And then I ended up building a computer out of that, and I built around that motherboard for my parents. And that is the most recent computer my parents have, and that was fine to do because my parents didn't need a GPU for what they're doing. They don't need it for their taxes and their Excel documents and their emails. They just need the onboard graphics, which is fine. And he kind of got to live out his dream a little bit because he came over and he got to watch the entire PC building process. The thing he hated the most that made him cringe was when I put the RAM in there, and he was like, dude, I wouldn't have been able to do that. I wouldn't have been able to do that. I saw the motherboard was moving. I heard the cracking, and I was like, I understand. Like, it is a scary process when you do it the first time. So he was happy with that at least. But what happened was recently he was talking to me, and this is another upgrade. For years we've been talking about this. He's like, hey man, I need to get some more storage on my computer. Can you help me out with that? And I said, sure. And you know how it is. It's like 2 years we're talking about this and it doesn't get done. So we finally managed for a time. He came over to the house. He brought his desktop with him, and he asked if I could clean it as well too, and I said, sure. So it wasn't even that bad, right? But we blew out the dust. It was better. We ended up getting him a 1 terabyte NVMe because it turns out his motherboard had 2 M.2 slots on there. So yeah, I think by default, I think he had a 1 terabyte on there. And then I believe we bought him a 2 terabyte drive, which he was happy about because he only had 1 drive for his OS and his games. And he was just like, oh man, I know you're going to hate this, but I kept having to delete and download and delete and download games. So like when one of our friends wants to play a game, I have to delete some other games and I have to re-download that one. And then we're done. I uninstall it and I have to re-download other games. And I'm like, Sean, my dude, write cycles. He's like, I know. So finally getting to this, right? I see the computer and I remember like I'm in the living room and I just look at it and it's one of those cool computers that has like for the panel, the side panel, it's glass so you could see through it. And I just look and I'm like, no. He's like, what's going on? I'm like, no, I'm not seeing this. He's like, well, what's happening? I'm like, hold on, I need to get my toolkit right now. So I get my toolkit, I come back down, I lay the computer down on its side, unscrew a couple of screws, slide off the glass. I look down, and I said, I told you all there was 2 M.2 slots on there. One of them was above the GPU, and there was a heatsink on there for the SSD, which is standard. So in my head, I'm thinking, okay, the SSD is sitting there underneath the heatsink, obviously. The reason why I was in disbelief is because he had another slot underneath his GPU, and that is where his SSD was. And I'm like, Sean, you only have 1 drive on this, right? He said, yes. And I'm like, okay, and nobody else, you haven't opened this, nobody else has? He said, no. And I'm just sitting there in disbelief. And I brought him over. I brought my girlfriend over because I said, I'm like, Sean, you paid money for this. I need you to see this right now. I was mad. So he asked what's going on. And I said, well, you see, this is where the heat sink is. And logically, the SSD would be behind it. So why isn't there a SSD there? And he didn't know. And I was like, I can tell you why. I don't know who, but whoever built this ended up putting the SSD into this other slot here, and they didn't put the heatsink on there, which, maybe not that egregious. I know some people will say, oh, you don't want to, you have to put a heatsink. You don't have to put a heatsink. It can be recommended, but my computer right now I'm using, it hasn't had a heatsink on it. I didn't know about these heatsinks when I built it back then, but the drive on there has been just fine. It's been working without issues, thankfully. However, with his, I'm like, your motherboard came with this. It is quite literally a waste. Like, it's not that you had to go out and buy another part. It came with this here. And he just starts laughing and he's like, well, why would they do that? And I was like, I don't know. Whoever built your computer was incompetent with this step here. The other stuff looks fine, but I just can't understand why they didn't put a heatsink right here on the drive. The heatsink was still there. It was still there, and the drive was in another slot. So I ended up fixing that up for him, and I put the heatsink on that drive because that was the OS one. So I'm like, that one's going to be the more important one. And then the other one we're just leaving bare in there. He'd asked about it. I was like, it should be fine. It's okay. It's just going to be your game drive. That's okay. This is why sometimes I'm just like, build your own PC. If you're not going to build it, grab your friend, grab your family member who knows how to pay them with a meal or with pizza or something. I don't know, but man, because sometimes you just can't trust these businesses sometimes with the pre-builts, even with the good businesses. It was so disappointing to see that. And again, they were laughing about it, but I was the one who was mad because I'm like, you're the one who spent all the money on this here. So they should have done this right. That was my belief on this. Oh, man. So, I end up speaking for a lot longer on just a couple topics than I was expecting on here, and I wanted to keep this, kind of still under an hour, so we're going to make this a little bit of a shorter episode here, but kind of at the end, I do like to talk about what games I'm currently playing. So, talking about that here, the games I'm currently playing or have played, it's been some good stuff. I'm gonna be honest with y'all, it's been some good stuff. So one of my best friends and I, we've been playing on the Xbox 360. Funny enough, we've been playing through the Gears of War series. I don't remember if I said this last episode, but we ended up finishing the first Gears of War on there. That was quite fun. We're now playing Gears of War 2. Actually, right after I finish recording this, we're going to be playing more of Gears of War 2. So I'm actually looking forward to that. But another game I end up finishing, which this is kind of when I started getting more of the bug. It was last month, but it's kind of been, I've been playing 360 on and off this year, but like last month I started really putting more of a focus on it. I finally end up finishing Ninja Gaiden 2, and I'm gonna be straight up with you all. I used a trainer, I used a trainer on there because I don't really like getting frustrated with games. I'm not a Souls type person, but I was like, I want to play this game, right? And I will tell you all, it's one of the coolest games I've played. It's such a fun hack and slash. Even with the infinite health on, I'm going to say I could still tell with the difficulty. Ninja Gaiden 2, the original one, I'm not talking about any of the other ones like Sigma or the one that ended up re-releasing. I think it was like Sigma Black or something like that. The one that's on PS4, PS5, the one that like just came out, right? From what I understand, how do I put it? The pure version, I'm putting it in quotes, the purest version of Ninja Gaiden 2 is the one that's on the Xbox 360. Like, base Ninja Gaiden 2 is still an Xbox 360 exclusive to this day. Because when it got ported over to PS3, to my understanding, the PS3 couldn't handle as many enemies on screen at once. So they ended up having to pretty much half the enemy count on PS3, which ended up making the game much easier. Then it was either that or other releases or kind of a combination, but I think there was also some changes that were made, some content that was removed, some content that was added. I think there was some censorship as well too, to some extent. But also just with the latest release, the game ended up being easier. They made the easier difficulties easier, and they made the harder difficulties more difficult. So if you want to play through that, it's fine. But like, for example, on the Xbox 360 version, it is a struggle. I'll tell you, even like, I mean, it sounds silly, but there's like some difficulty even when you play with cheats enabled. Like if you're using a trainer and you have infinite health, there's still difficulty on that because the game is so punishing. It is so unwieldy on the system. It really goes wild on there. While as with the other ports on there, they ended up making them easier on there, like I said. So like if you play on the same difficulty level on the PS5 version, there were people, I was actually looking it up because I'm looking up like, a guide on Ninja Gaiden 2 if I'm like getting stuck at a certain point, and it was getting it mixed up with like the PS5 version. So it's like I was seeing threads from like 15 years ago next to threads that were made 2 months ago. And there's people who, for example, like I'm saying, you play on the easiest difficulty on 360 and it is still punishingly hard. But then if you play on that same difficulty level on the PS5, there's people who are like, hey, I remember this game being a lot harder. What happened? Because like I figured I got better at games, but like I remember struggling really hard with the 360 version, and now on the PS5 version, I'm playing on the same difficulty, and I'm kind of breezing through the game, and I haven't had difficulty until like the last like 2 or 3 chapters in the game. So did something happen or what? And that's where like the aforementioned stuff I brought up with the changes, the difficulty, things like that, that's what came up there. I don't really know if that's like the better version or not, if that's like your preference on there. I guess I'll say if you want like the original release, if you want to see how that felt and you want that like original punishing difficulty, the Xbox 360 version is still a good one. But on top of that, the 360 version plays, handles, looks beautiful. This game is from 2008. It still impresses. It is a stunning game. The Easter eggs on there are great. The product, the ad placement in there, like it's great. Like, you have like some 360 stuff in there, which of course, the Xbox 360 promo in there, you can't get that on any other platform. But man, like wonderful game. Wonderful game. I can't say enough good things about it. I think the only thing I'll say on this, and I'll move on to the next game here, is that there's games like, again, I'm not a Souls type player, right? But I heard a really great analogy for Elden Ring, that was it, which is a Souls type game, of course. And I'm going to butcher it, of course, but essentially it was a person who said the reason why they really like playing that game is because you essentially start off with nothing and you have to beat these like really difficult and just it feels like you have to accomplish these impossible tasks. And everything is stacked up against you. But then when you're able to do that, you're able to kind of prove to yourself that you can go through this, you can get through this here and persevere to the end. And you can get through a difficult situation. And I think that's beautiful. And that was actually, that was, again, I'm butchering it a little bit. But I remember when I heard that, I was like, that is probably the best description I've heard for a Souls type game. Plus, when it comes to like the mechanics and the difficulty and how it works on there, there's people, they say, no, you need to understand the rhythm of it. Like once you understand the patterns, once you kind of know the process, if you just like try to go in guns blazing, you're going to die every single time. But if you actually take your time with it, if you actually check out the patterns, if you kind of get into the rhythm of it all, the game becomes much easier and you really become one with the game. You kind of find a zen with that. I understand that. Ninja Gaiden 2 is not that at all. Ninja Gaiden 2 on the Xbox 360 is difficult and it's punishing just to be punishing and difficult for the sake of being difficult and punishing. But it's still a wonderful game. If you're interested in it, play it. Like, even if you're not like, because I played it years ago, like a little bit of it, even if you're not into these difficult games, just try the first like 1 or 2 levels and you'll find appreciation in the game. It's still great. So some of the other games I was playing here, which was all on 360. That's so funny. Okay. So I end up playing, there was actually a prototype I had wanted to play. This had ended up releasing, released online, I guess you can say. I think it was last year, and I finally got around to playing around with it a little bit, but it was NX1. Otherwise known as Call of Duty Future Warfare. Otherwise known as the Call of Duty game that Neversoft, the same developers that worked on the Tony Hawk games, Neversoft was in charge of developing a Call of Duty game. And it was supposed to come out, I think it was supposed to take the place of either Advanced Warfare or Ghosts. I'm not sure which one it was in all honesty. But it was supposed to take the place of one of those 2 games. And essentially they developed it, they worked on it, like there was a campaign, there was a multiplayer, and then for whatever reason from the top, it ended up being scrapped. And then we end up either getting Ghosts, which is one of the worst Call of Duties. That game is so bad. That game is so bad. Call of Duty Ghost is horrible. Or Advanced Warfare, which is like, okay. It was okay, right? But Future Warfare was actually really good. Now, I ended up beating this as much as I could, and by that I mean there's only like 5 or 6 campaign maps that you can actually play from start to finish, and the other ones kind of crash for you and don't really work. But I played it, and I was shocked. I'm like, this game is good. It plays really well. It looks great. I could see the premise of it, like the production value is high on it. And in a way, it frustrated me because I'm like, I really wish we saw this to fruition. I really wish we saw this to the end. That would have been great. But no, we didn't there. It ended up getting canceled. And I'm sure there were other really cool Call of Duty games that we could have gotten that got canceled, and we end up getting crappier Call of Duty games. But that's how it goes sometimes. Another game that was really fun, I've played it. I played it years ago. I've been trying to go through, and actually this is what I've been doing, Ash. I recognize it now. I've been trying to go back and play games and finish them that I've been wanting to play and finish. That was it. Okay, I'm also trying to do and a little bit aside. I'm kind of just trying to play what I have, because I'm kind of at the point where I'm like, I have a large collection of games. There's a lot of games I don't play. There's a lot of games that I started and I never finished. So there's old games on these systems that I've never ever played, and there's other games that I do want to go back and finish that I dropped for whatever reason. And there's not too much in the modern space that's interesting me now. In all honesty, the only game right now, the only brand new game that interests me is Split Fiction, and my girlfriend's been really busy with some stuff she's been working on, so when things wind down for her, and I told her she's interested in it too, I'm like, look, when things wind down for you, I'll buy it, we'll play it together, but right now, you're busy, you don't have time for it, so that's fine. I'll just be playing on my 360. I'm perfectly happy. But no, another game here. I actually played this on the Xbox One years ago, and then I got put off by it because it crashed on me. And I'm like, what the hell? This game is new and it's on a new system and it's crashing. I'm not interested anymore. Was Halo Spartan Assault. This is interesting. It's not a great game. It really isn't. It's okay. All right, it's okay. But it is a top-down Halo game, except when you look down at your hands and you use the controls on there, it looks like a Diablo-type game, like a isometric game. That's what I'm trying to say. However, the interesting thing about it is that the thing that helped me with the controls is just pretend that you're playing an actual Halo game, but you don't need to aim precisely. And when you realize that, the game opens up for you. But it's short, it's dumb fun. It's the type of game where, honestly, I could be having a in-depth conversation with a friend on the phone, and I could be playing the game in the background, and I could pay attention to both just fine. Up until the end, like, near the end of the game, it starts to spike up in difficulty. It's not like insanely difficult, but it does start to spike up in difficulty. So that's when I was getting a little frustrated. That's when I had to actually lock in a little bit and pay attention. But overall, it was an okay game. I ended up playing it on 360 because I just had it on my RGH and I wanted to play it on there. And I didn't feel like hooking up my Series X. But great game. Res HD. Now, I also played this on 360, but I've kind of played it on every platform. I played it on Dreamcast originally. I played it on PS2, 360. I guess it came out on PS3. I never played on there. But then I also played it on PS4 and PS4 VR. Awesome. Actually, my family loved it in VR. They thought it was awesome. But I ended up finishing this as well, too, which I gotta admit something a little embarrassing to you all. This is actually the first time I've properly finished the game. Because you see, every single time I've gone through the game, I ended up going through, I want to, how did it happen? Oh, no, I understand now. I understand. Okay, I know what I messed up on. So when you go through it, just like the standard campaign mode, I guess you can say, for lack of a better term, the entire game, it's 5 levels, right? But when you're playing through it, there's 4 levels, and you can play through levels 1 through 4, and then that's it. And I always thought, okay, that's it, right? But then I remember I was looking at the achievement list, and I'm like, wait a minute, Act 5? I didn't know there was an Act 5. I've been playing it this whole time. I had no idea there was an Act 5. And then I looked it up, and the way to unlock Act 5 is that you have to get, I believe it's called actualization, but you have to get 100% actualization on Acts 1 through 4, which I end up going back somehow. I don't know how. I guess I did this every single time, which is dumb. But I somehow missed 100% on Act 1. So I was like, oh, okay, well, this makes it easier for me then, because I end up knocking out 2, 3, and 4, which were obviously more difficult. So Act 1, I went back, I replayed it, I got 100%. Act 5 ended up unlocking. Act 5 is definitely the most difficult of them, I would say. But I played through it, and actually, maybe it was good that I waited this long to discover it, because it ended up being a surprise for me. And I'm not going to spoil it, but the 5th act, it gets existential, and it's beautiful. It is beautiful. And then finishing it, seeing the credits roll, pretty great. Not gonna lie, pretty great. Res HD is one of those HD remasters that is done perfectly, in my opinion, because on top of it, not only it's on, I played it on the 360, it played super well. It was quite well optimized because I was playing on RGH, so it's I could bring up the temperatures. The system stayed so cool the whole time I was running it. It was not cooking up at all. But, it plays smooth, no issues there. But then on top of it, they didn't have to do this, but they did. You can play in HD mode or standard mode. And when you play in standard mode, you play the game in 4:3, and it even reduces the graphics quality as well too. So you're essentially playing how it would be on, I don't really know which one, how it would be on like Dreamcast or PlayStation 2. And I thought that was such a cool touch, and that was an extra effort and a whole extra mode on there that they didn't have to include. And the reason why I say that is because for me, I was like, oh, this is really awesome. This is so cool. And then after 2 minutes, I was like, okay, I saw it. I'm going to quit out of here because like, why would you play the standard version when you could play in HD with 16:9 and it looks beautiful and all that stuff? There's not really a reason that I need to play the standard one aside from just saying I want to play the standard one for fun. So that's why I'm saying they didn't have to do that, and they did, and I love that they did that. And Res HD is one of the best HD remasters I've ever played. Props to Sega on that one. The last game I ended up playing through was, I have kind of a bad habit with the Battlefield games for whatever reason. Every single Battlefield game, except for Hardline, that's the only one. I have finished multiple Battlefield games before, but for some reason, every single Battlefield game, I play the campaign and I get stuck like really early on, like 15, 20 minutes in, and then I just get annoyed and I drop it. And the multiplayer, I'm never ever good at it. Ever. I can't do Battlefield multiplayer. I think the most I did, I played Battlefield 1 multiplayer. I don't even know why I did. I think it was just like something for friends and I to play and mess around with, but I don't know. I actually kind of forgot I did that until I saw Battlefield 1 footage recently. I was like, wait a minute, I played that online. So, I don't know. However, Battlefield 3, I always thought this game was really cool. Again, I played this on 360, and it was one of those games, I didn't even like the PC version, because the PC version, it was weird. You had to get it through Origin, but then it wasn't just that. You don't just use the Origin launcher, because honestly, let's say EA sucks, right? But the Origin launcher is actually not bad. It's fine. But Battlefield 3 is this one weird game where you have to open up the game through a browser. Like, you have to open the game in like Origin Launcher, for example, and then it opens up a browser window, and then within the browser you have to click on a button to boot up Battlefield 3. I don't know. I don't know. So I played it on the console, and I tried it years ago. Like when it came out in 2011, I tried it, and another thing that was cool about this, at least in my opinion, I thought at a technical level it was cool. It was one of those games that was funny. It came out obviously later into the 360's life cycle, but it had a optional HD content patch that you could install, which it came on 2 discs. One of them was the play disc and one of them was the installer. And what you would do is it would say, hey, do you want to install the HD pack? And you say yes. And then you have to put in the other disc, and it rips the content from it, and then you pop your play disc back in. And it's not even that big. It's like a 1.5 gigabyte install. It's something like that. But the reason why I say that's funny is because, well, one, I don't know how much of a difference it made. I think it did make a difference, but it wasn't like night and day. But around that time as well, too, because again, this is when, again, like the PC gaming and PC building was becoming much more accessible and much more popular. I remember at the time there were other games coming out. Skyrim, this is the one I remember with it. People were saying, man, I fired it up on Xbox 360. It does not look good at all. And, you know, I'm just waiting for Bethesda to fix it. Like, I really hope that they issue like an HD content installer or something. Like, it really needs an HD patch. And people were just like, no, this isn't going to be a normal thing. Like, Skyrim on 360 just looks like Skyrim on 360. Like, just because there was an HD content installer on Battlefield 3 does not mean that every single game is going to have an HD content patch that you can install. But me being me, I decided to install it. I put that on there. I got the latest title update. I played through it. And then I got like 15 minutes in, you know, it looked great, and I got stuck at the same part. But this time around, I said, you know what? I'm not just going to get frustrated. I'm actually going to get frustrated, and then I'm going to work through this. And I did, and after like 5 minutes, I was like, okay, that was dumb. Why was I just really distracted before? Could I not figure this out? I have no idea. So I was able to work through that. end up playing through the game, and I'll say usually the Battlefield games have a pretty forgettable campaign to me. It's usually it looks really cool. It's a blockbuster-esque experience. It's very much a Michael Bay type experience, right? There's god rays, there's tons of lighting, there's explosives, there's guns. There is a story there, but you probably don't care that much about the story. But I will say, the reason why I wanted to go back to this is because Battlefield 3 was like one of the few Battlefield games where I was actually engaged in the story, and I wanted to know what was happening. And I got to see it to the end, and I was happy about that. I didn't run into any issues, thankfully. Like Battlefield 4, actually on my second channel, I have a video that still gets a ton of views because I showed how to get through. There's one part where you have to swim, and your character can just get stuck. And it's like an issue with the engine and the frame rate and all that stuff on there. So I showed how to unstick yourself on there, and it impacts every single build of the game. And it's bad that it's still unpatched, and it's never ever going to be patched or fixed up, unfortunately. Okay, that was Battlefield 4. However, on Battlefield 3, I was playing through it. I was actually having a lot of fun playing this game. And then it was funny because for like a lot of it too, my girlfriend was next to me. Like she was kind of doing some work on her laptop. She was seeing it. And she was like, this is like, okay, what game is this? Is Battlefield 3? Like, this looks really good. And I was like, yeah, like I can tell. And it's kind of what I said, at the top here. I'm like, look, I understand. The game's, it's kind of struggling to maintain 30 frames per second. It's obviously not like 1080p or 4K or whatever it is natively, but the fact that this game from 2011 ended up releasing and is playing like this on a console from 2005 is incredibly impressive to me. And she agreed. She's like, no, this looks really good. And like, you seem to be enjoying this. And like, this is a really good looking game. Like, what was this again? I was like, Battlefield 3. She's like, is it like Call of Duty? I'm like, yeah. It's similar. It's like Call of Duty adjacent. They both play very differently, but it's kind of in the same style, sure. So even like, non-gamers or people who aren't going to be as into gaming as me, like they were looking at it and they're just like, this looks good. This is impressive running on a system that is almost 20 years old. So Battlefield 3, what I'll say, campaign-wise, it still holds up. If you haven't played through the campaign, I recommend it. The only bad thing I have to say about the campaign is that it did come out in this era of shooters where there were many shooters at this time, and Battlefield 3 is one of the offenders. The campaign is cool, don't get me wrong, but for the most part, the campaign kind of just feels like a 6-hour training mission for multiplayer. That's really the only complaint I have about it. It doesn't really stand on its own. I think it's worth playing and it's enjoyable. But the Call of Duty games, the campaign actually felt like a separate entity and experience and something that was really enjoyable there. Battlefield 3 did have that enjoyment, but for the most part, it kind of just felt like a training simulator to get you online. And obviously that's what they wanted. They wanted to sell you the game so you'd play multiplayer. That was it. So those were the games that I've been playing recently. Of course, still doing the Ring Fit when I can, but I didn't bring that up here because, I'm still doing my Ring Fit. That's as per usual. Either way, that is about it for this episode here. Cutting it just over an hour, but that's fine. I want to talk about, you get me talking about Xbox 360 related stuff, and I'm just going to keep going. So that means I kind of need to shut it down here a little soon, this episode here. But let's pick a keyword, right? If you made it to the end of this episode, first of all, thank you so much for making it to the end here. And secondly, what I like to do, if you haven't been here before, I like to pick a keyword or a key phrase. And if you pick a keyword or a key phrase and you've made it to the end of this episode, when I pick it, I need to take a break. That's what this is meaning. It's fine. This is the end. What I'm trying to say here is I'm going to pick a keyword or key phrase, and if you use this in a comment on the video upload, I'll know that you made it to the end. I do read my comments. I reply to comments as well. So for this, typically I pick something off of my desk here, and I got this little tiny plushie that I got when I was traveling once. How about dog? Do you have a dog? Do you prefer dogs over cats? Are dogs your favorite pets? Do you think we do deserve dogs? We don't deserve dogs? How do you feel about it? I personally absolutely love dogs. So let's use that. Or what's up, dog? Something like that. If you use the word dog or some variation of it in a comment on the video upload here, I'll know that you made it to the end. Anyways, let's go ahead and wrap this episode up here. This is Mr. Mario, signing off. Thank you all for watching and listening, everyone. If you enjoyed this episode, a like would absolutely be appreciated. If you didn't like it, a dislike is fine as well, too. But as I always say, This is Mr. Mario, signing off. Again, thank you for listening and watching, everyone. And until next time.